Hey, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. So we'll start on time. So just give a few more minutes for others to join. But yeah, we'll start by 9 p.m. So I see we have Tim, Sonia, Susanna, Wendy. Also, if you have any questions, just please put in chat window so that I can just take you through those questions. I'm going to unmute every one of you, so or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask those questions. Am I audible for everyone? Okay, so let's get started. If others can join, so they'll just join us. Oh, is it a lot of echo? Is it better now, or you're still getting echo? Okay, thanks. Right, thanks for joining today. So we'll be talking about how we are going to automate the business process using SharePoint Designer 2013 workflows. Okay. Um, Okay, so in this particular webinar, we'll be talking about different concepts. So I'll just go through each one of them. But while going through each concept, I'll be just taking through the questions as well that was submitted. So Alok submitted, one of the question was, tell me the role of workflows in SharePoint. Like I said, the main purpose of the workflows is to automate the business processes. This was introduced lately with March 2007 onwards. Before that, there was no workflows itself for SharePoint, which was with WSS. And there were always a lot of requirements that the business users used to get, and they have to automate. So that's where, from SharePoint 2010 onwards, you have yeah, you have workflows, and from SharePoint 2013 onwards, there was a lot of improvements that were introduced in workflows. Nothing has changed when it was started with SharePoint 2016 or even with SharePoint Online, which is Office 365. So that's actually the main role of workflows. Basically, you're going to reduce the cost for each organization by introducing automating different processes using workflows in SharePoint. So what are we going to discuss in this particular session? The first one would be we're going to talk about different types of workflows that we could develop. And then we're going to discuss about how we are going to deploy those workflows and what would be the approach. Then we will be talking about some of the common workflow actions that we will be using. So what I'm going to do with all these steps is I'll be taking you through one of the application that I have built, and I'm going to show you how these things works. So basically then I'll just give that particular solution. If you want to just practice with that, then you can go ahead and use those solution packages. So which is again covers the second step, deploying workflows. Then there, with respect to the workflow actions, there are a lot of workflow actions that are available, starting from send an email or assign action or task, also updating list items, and there are quite a lot of actions which are available, calling REST API, right? So we'll see some of those things within this particular workshop. And then we'll talk about customizing the task forms. This is one of the important things when we work with real world projects, because when we see the task forms, by default you will see a lot of fields which are not required for the end users, right? So either you wanted to customize the form by just hiding those fields or manipulating those fields. So we'll look at how we are going to create those custom forms, and we're going to talk about the custom task outcomes as well. By default, in the workflows, it provides only the approved or rejected options. It doesn't provide the other options. So the first one would be approved and rejected. These are the two options we get by default, but most of the times, the projects that I have worked on may not use approved option or rejected option. So someone will say like, okay, I wanted to use just approve, okay, or I wanted to use deny. So there would be different kinds of requirements, or I would say send for approval. If I'm using multiple stages, I might use different text. So that can be done using the custom task outcome option. So I'm going to discuss about how we are going to create those custom task outcomes and how we could implement customizing those options. Okay, so let's get into the designer workflows. So based on the type of workflows that will get associated with different artifacts we have, those will be classified into three types. The first one is a list workflow. So list workflow is basically, let's say you have information where you could store the details about leave information, or let's say you want to store the details about expenses. Those are different kinds of lists where you'll be storing the information. Now what you can do is you can create a workflow, and whenever someone added an item, let's say I apply for a leave request, then as soon as I add an item, that will send an email to my manager. So in this case, what I can do is I can build a list workflow and associate that list workflow with specific list. That's about the list workflow, which is the first option. The problem with this list workflow is whatever the workflow that you're going to develop will be associated with the list. That means when you're trying to use the same functionality, or if you're trying to reuse the workflow that you have built with the other list, then you have a problem there. Okay, so that's where you have one more option, which is a reusable workflow. So what this reusable workflow does is, you can build the workflow that will be associated with lists or, sorry, the content types and multiple lists. So what you can basically do is you can create a content type and associate that content type with multiple lists so that you can basically reuse this workflow. Now, when you develop reusable workflows, deployment will be much more easier compared to the list workflows. Because in case of list workflows, you will have GUIDs and everything will be associated. So there will be challenges when you are deploying the workflows from one environment to the other environment. I'm talking about, let's say you developed the workflow in dev environment, and now next you need to move to the test, right? Then later stages UAT, and finally you wanted to push that to prod. So if you build list workflow, those workflows will use those GUIDs, and while you are moving them, it breaks. So make sure, my preferred approach always will be developing reusable workflows. But there are scenarios where you have to use site workflows as well. Okay, this will not be associated with a list or even with the content type. One of the scenario that you can think of is, let's say I wanted to perform some action on all the announcements list in different sites, okay, different subsites. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a site workflow. Or if I wanted to perform an action on multiple lists, then we will use the third option called site workflow. So these are all the types of workflows defined based on the association. There are two more types based on how you're going to develop or how the execution of the workflow will happen. Okay, this is purely based on the execution. So this is the first one is sequential, and the second one is state machine. And both these types are possible if you are trying to develop designer workflows. Okay, so you can build sequential workflows, and even you can build state machine workflows. I have a question that was submitted before this webinar, where how I can go to the previous stage with the help of designer workflows. So what you can do is, if you wanted to use state machine, you can use something called stages concept, where you can move from one state to the other state. For example, let's say you are using expenses approval. Okay, so within the expenses, you have an employee, and next one is manager, where he will be approving the request. Then let's say you have one more role, which is finance, who will be the final approval, right? So in this case, let's say I entered, or any employee entered something wrong with the expenses. So what manager can do is, instead of directly rejecting it, he can request for update. Okay, then in that case, what happens is the workflow will send one more email to the employee, then he will make changes and send it back to the manager. That is something can be achieved using stages. So both these workflows are possible in case of SharePoint Designer workflows itself. All right. So this is how, let's say I have a training approval system, and let's talk about just two roles, right? Where I have an employee role and the manager. And in this case, let's say employee submitted a request, which is for the training approval. Then that will go to manager. So our manager will get a notification saying that it has to be approved. So what he can do is either he can approve it or reject it. And as soon as if he performs one of these operations, this workflow will get end there itself. Okay, these kind of things we call it as sequential workflow. Okay, and let's talk about state machine. So here I went with one more additional level, where I have employee, manager, and HR. Okay, so again, in this case, it's a leave request again. where employee submitted the leave request and a notification was sent to the manager. Now in this case, let's say he didn't approve it, but what he's trying to do is he was asking for more information about that leave request. Now in this case, we can send a notification to the employee and asking him to update the form. Now you can see the flow here. Once he updates the form, we can send one more email to manager saying that please go ahead and approve it. I have done the changes. This is what state machine we are calling about. And like I said, this can be done using stages. Okay. So here we have a question. So can a workflow roll back from 9th level, for example, to 3rd level? Yes, I can always move. Let's say you have multiple stages and you still wanted to get back to the employee. Let's say even at the HR level, if I wanted to send that back to the employee, if you see this condition, which is 3rd level in this case, and when I reject it, I'm still sending a notification to the employee saying that this was rejected, please go ahead and update the form. So he will update the form based on the feedback or the comments that was provided by the next levels. So there is no limit on the number of levels that you can take back. So it depends on your requirement. Okay. Anyone has any questions here? All right, I'll move on to the next item. So let's talk about the scenario I was talking about, where we have an expenses approval system. I have an employee, we call it as requester, and we have a manager, and we have a finance department. So when we have 3 different roles, how are we going to develop this particular workflow in your environment? So obviously, I assume that some of those things were already set up. Okay. Sorry, let me go back. Saying that, let's say you have the groups that was created already. Okay, I'm talking about the SharePoint groups. So there would be groups for each one of the role, the employee, and as well as manager and the finance. So if you are developing from scratch, so this is how you will be building the solution for the workflows. Let's say you got a requirement and this is the requirement and this is what I'm going to do. So before the groups, obviously I'm going to create either site collection or site. Okay. So once I have that, I'm going to provision all the groups and I'll set the permission levels as well while creating the groups. So if I need any custom permission levels, I'm going to create those custom permission levels also. Okay. So once those things were done, I'm going to add users to each group. So that's how the actual application will be. Right? So what I have done for our demo, so I have already done most of the steps. I'm going to just take you through what I have done so far. So here I have, So here I have an expenses approval system where this is a separate site collection that was created for, and I have all the groups that was created. So if I go to the peoples and groups, I have 3 groups which are for employees, manager, and the finance department. And in the finance department, I have, let's say, I just added a few test users. In this case, Frank, and I have a manager group, in this case, Chris. Okay, so each one of them has respective permissions. Now, if I go to the application, what I did was I created a simple SharePoint list that we could use to store the expenses. So here I already added a few expenses, and let's say each one has a department, expense code, and manager, and I have already associated the workflow. So I'll take you through the workflow code later. So what I'm going to do here is, let's say I'm going to add a new item. Yeah. So I'll say, I'll just put some expense. Then in this case, I'm going to assign this to Chris, who is manager. Let's say you have this code and you have updated the business purpose. These are not mandatory. And if you are looking at this form, this is actually modern view, not the classic. Okay. Let's go ahead and save it. As soon as I save this, what happens is behind the scenes, the workflow is going to get executed. Okay, so I can go ahead and see what workflow is getting executed. So here I have expenses approval workflow that was started, and it automatically picks up the user that I have entered, and it created a task. And also one more best practice whenever you are working with the workflows is make sure you do the logging to the history. So this is one of the options that you could use for debugging. Okay. If you want to debug the workflows, so use log to history activity to perform all these operations. Now I know that when this information is logged and the task was created, I'm pretty sure that my workflow got executed up till this point. Okay, so I'll come back to that how I have done these things. Now, if I go back to the Chris account, and I'll be able to see the one that I have, the task that has been created. So let's log in with Chris account. Okay, so let's give it in here. So here we go to other window. Okay, this is the one. So this is the one I have logged in with Chris account. Okay. Now, whenever we add a task to that particular person, here I'm going to get the task. So Chris received an email saying that you have a new task. So either go ahead and approve it or reject it. But this email template is the default one. You can in fact customize the email that you're going to send. So what I'm going to do here, I'll just go here and look at the tasks. And let's go ahead and edit this. Okay, so I'll say approved. And this comments was not available by default. Okay, I'll just go ahead and approve it. Now this is all looking good. Now Chris approved. So basically based on our workflow, it has to go to the finance department. That's the next step, right? So let's log in with Frank. Frank is from the finance department. Now if I go to his email, he should have a task that was sent to him. Now let's go ahead and see his email. Now you can see here he has a new email. It says task is assigned just now at 8:50, and he got an email saying that please go ahead and approve it. So now again he can go to that particular item. Okay, so I'm gonna say approve this. Okay, and I can go ahead and approve it. Yeah, we have a question here from Susanna. So can you show the later how to set up several levels of manager approvals? Yeah, sure. I'll show the code. I just wanted to show how this functionality works. Then I'll take you through the workflow and how those things can be done. Now, once everything is approved, now I can go back to the actual main list. And this is the item that was submitted, right? Now let's do F5 here. I can see both task status were completed here, and there were 2 tasks that were created, and I was logging the relevant information saying that expenses request was approved by the manager, expenses request is approved by the finance team. And also, this is very, very important. You need to use a proper way of creating these tasks. Okay, make sure you use proper naming conventions and everything, because that's how the business users will be reading that information, right? So now if I go back to the expenses, you can see basically this particular workflow or the item is approved. Now I know that this is approved. So basically what we can do is, like, I can configure the workflow in such a way that I'll get an email. So how this was done? This was done using the SharePoint Designer. Okay. And I have seen very common issues even today in our Facebook group. Someone was not able to open the workflows. So what you have to do is few things. You have to make sure that you have SharePoint Designer 2013 SP1 need to be installed, and there are 3 more KB updates that you have to install. So once you install everything, then you will be able to open the workflows, because it will always says that Windows Workflow Foundation 3.0 or the .NET Framework 3.0 is not available. So make sure you do that. Okay. So let's open the workflow and see how this looks like. And let me go back for a moment. Okay, here itself. If you see the workflow, it says the type reusable. I wanted to create the reusable instead of list workflow. So how did I create that? If I go to the workflows, here you have different options. You can create list workflow, and you can see all the lists that are available in my site is showing up here. And I have one more option, reusable workflow. And when I click on that, it says give me the name and give me the description, and also what's the content type. In this case, by default, it will be associated with all content types. So that means it's not you can attach to all content types in your site. It's not restricted for a specific content type. Okay. So here, platform type. Okay. If you are working on premises and if this option is not available, that means your workflow manager is not configured properly. So make sure you talk to your administrator and configure SharePoint 2013 Workflow Manager. Then you will be able to see this option. But if you are working on SharePoint Online, this will be available by default. So what I did here, I went ahead and specified the name and description, and I clicked OK. And once I have done that, I will be able to see the reusable workflow. Then if I edit that, this workflow has a lot of functions and activities. But before we get into the actual workflow, you see how the ribbon actually getting changed when I'm moving from one section to the other section. So I'll just take you for a moment to backwards. Now you keep focusing on the workflow. I mean the ribbon, sorry. So now in this case, when I select the workflow, I have different options. I can save this as a template. I can import from Visio, right? So all those options are available. When I save this as a template, that's where a WSB package will generate it. When I hover it, you can see that this will store it as a solution package. This is what you will be using for the deployment. Now, let's click on the workflow itself. Now I see a few more options. I see local variables. I see an initiation form. What is this initiation form? Initiation form is nothing but if, in this case, we saw an example where it just started the workflow automatically as soon as I entered an item, right? I haven't done anything. But there were cases when item is added by the user, I wanted to enter the approver name or some other information by myself. So in those cases, we could use the initiation form. But the limitation here is, if I wanted to use the initiation form, uh, I can't start the workflow automatically. So it's only the manual approach. Okay. So there is no automatic option. So you can't start the workflow with automatically. Okay. So that's one limitation if you wanted to use initiation form. Okay. So let's go back to the workflow itself. Okay, we have a couple of questions. One from Gaurish. We are using custom list of the task. Yes, we are using custom list to store the expenses and the task list for storing the tasks. So I'll show you the task list as well in a moment. One more question from Janet is, how do you let users to set a due date like in SharePoint 2010 workflows? So you mean due date so that it will send the reminders for the approvers? Okay, so if you wanted to do that, you have to use a configuration kind of thing, and you have to check for the dates. Okay, you have to compare. This is what I will do. So what I'll do is I'll set. I'm sorry. So we'll set the due date in a configuration list. Then I'm going to compare the date based on the task that was created. That is one way of doing it, so that I can send the reminder emails. Okay. Can you please explain the initiation form again? Yeah, initiation form is basically when you wanted to use, or when you wanted to give an option for the users to enter some information before they start the workflow. Okay. So in the previous example that you saw, as soon as I entered the information, okay, the workflow got triggered. So it has started automatically when the item is added. But in case of initiation form, if I wanted to use a user to enter something before the workflow is started, then that's where I'm going to use initiation form. Darshana has a question. Isn't it look like just the approval workflow or no? What is this regarding? Sorry, I didn't understand your question. So if you could just rephrase it or provide more details, yeah, that would be helpful. All right. So yeah, let's go back and see what are the things that we have in the workflow. So here I have used a set workflow status activity. So using this workflow status activity, I can set what are the different statuses. Obviously, I don't want to just say like, okay, completed or in progress. I wanted to have different statuses. Sometimes you need to have approved, right, and rejected, and I wanted to have in progress, and maybe based on the different stages, let's say when you apply for example, passport, you will get different kinds of statuses, right? So if you want to maintain those things, that is where we are going to use this particular set workflow status. Then the next one I was talking about, this logging, log workflow status activity. So this is the one that we use for debugging purpose. So put as many logs as possible when you started working with SharePoint Designer workflows at the beginning, when you are in development environment, so that you can basically look at like, okay, if this information got logged within your workflow status here. Okay, let me take you there. And that means that workflow got executed till that point successfully. Okay, so that's how you basically debug the workflow. So you might have seen at different places I have logged to workflow history list. So I have it here. Though in this case I can send an email. For the demo purpose, what I have done is I just put the login so that we know that the specific functionality was performed properly. Okay, that's the log to history action. So all these actions, you can see it from the action section. Okay, so based on different, you have grouping as well here. You have core sections, you have list actions, you have task actions, you have utility actions. Okay, so in case of approval, this is what I'm going to do. I'm assigning a task for the manager that was entered by the end user. Okay, so this will work in case if I wanted to assign a single task. Okay, assign a task to one user. Okay, or assign a task to group. So within this group, anyone can go ahead and approve it. Okay, then that task will get completed. So in those scenarios, we will go ahead and use assign a task activity. So here, what I have done, if you see here, so I just assigned that to a manager, and then I specified the task title. Okay, so you have other options as well, the task options and email options and the outcome options. I'll just come back to that in a moment. So once I have assigned the task, what it gives basically is, it gives me two variables. One is task outcome, the other one is task ID. Okay, so the task outcome is basically here. It will say either that particular task is approved or rejected. I can have the other options as well. When we customize the task outcome, so we can get those other options also. I will explain what is task outcome in a moment, or how we can create the custom ones. Then I will have the task ID also. Okay, this is available only in case of assign a task. There is actually one more action, which is actually composite task, or sorry, this is a start a task process in case of design workflows. This will be used when you are working with multiple groups or multiple users. Okay, but in this case, I have only one manager, and anyone can from the finance team can approve it. Okay, so here what I'm doing now, if it is approved, okay, I am using this transitions to stage option. Then I'm going to a different stage. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. I could use stages to go into different steps. So here you can see, I can just simply click on stage. It will add a stage. Okay, so in this case, we don't need any other stage. But if you have, like Susanna was asking, if I wanted to multiple approvals, what I'm going to do, let's say I have HR here. I'm going to add one more stage and put it as HR. Then based on finance approval, I'm going to transition to HR stage if it is approved. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and end that particular workflow there itself. Okay, so those were the things we could do for multiple stages. Now, once it is approved, then I'm again assigning a task to, this time, instead of individual user, I'm just assigning to a group. Okay, so this is a group, which is a finance group. And then again, I have a simple task title. Okay, so there are actually other properties as well if you see for the assigned task. For example, if I don't want to send a default email, then I can set this to yes. So in that case, what you have to do is you have to create your own custom email and send it to that particular approver, because that is what happening in case of the manager here. he is not getting an email which is like in a formatted way. This is an out-of-the-box approach, right? So what you can do is you can set this to yes, then you can wait for the status to be completed. Then once it is completed, you can send an email to the next level. Okay. So that's how this particular workflow has been built, and we were able to see the functionality that you are looking at. So I had one more question that was submitted by Suresh. I have added a new task outcome, which is revert back to task edit form. I wanted to revert back to previous stage when I click on revert back. I didn't find revert back task outcome option in the default approval status column. So as the column is default, 5 outcome options like approved, rejected, pending, scheduled. I wanted to perform some actions when approval status equal to revert back. So if you want to set that to default, what you're going to do is you have to put that option as the first option. I'll just show you that in a moment. Okay. So this can be achieved using the task outcome. Okay, when you want to show different options. And this is a type of column that was introduced from SharePoint 2013 onwards. This was not available previously with SharePoint 2010. So this is available even in SharePoint 2016. Okay, sorry, SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint Online. Okay. So in those scenarios, like Suresh mentioned, then that's where we are going to work with custom task forms and task outcome. And the custom task form can be created with the help of this content type. So by default, we have this workflow task SharePoint 2013 content type. I can inherit that particular content type or add that content type to the workflow task list and use that content type. Okay. And Shekhar has a question as well, how to use impersonation. So you have, Shekhar, you have one more option in SharePoint 2013 called app step. So you have to configure the app step. Then once you enable it, you can add that particular action. Then you can put whatever the code that you want to. So what that code does is basically, it will use an account that the workflow was published. Okay, this is very, very important. So whatever the account that you are going to use to publish that workflow, that particular user will use the app step. So the best practice here is create a specific account and make sure you have a site collection admin access to that and use that account to publish the workflows. So don't use the default accounts. Okay. And we have one more question from Halagarajan. So when we develop a designer-based workflow in one environment, what are the different options available to deploy in other environment where we don't have designer access, update and new? Yeah, that's actually the default mechanism we do, because in production, we always don't have the SharePoint designer, right? So what you have to do is, in the target environment, make sure you have all the lists and libraries deployed, okay? Then the next step is, I prefer reusable workflows, and when you build the reusable workflows, you can create a WSP package out of that. Then you can put this WSP package in solution gallery, okay? And activate a specific feature that will get created because of the WSP that you're going to activate. Okay, and then you should be able to, the next step would be associate the workflow with the list. Okay, there are a few manual steps, but you don't have to use SharePoint Designer when you do all these things. I hope that answers your question. Okay, let's look at the task outcomes and task forms I was talking about. So here I have a We'll go back to the site. So what I did here, before I get into the task form, we have a question from Sonia. How to create a WSP of SPD workflows? So here I have this reusable workflow, right? When I go to that particular workflow, I'll see this save as template option. Refresh this. For some reason it was not enabled. So you can basically package your workflow as save as template, and it is going to generate the WSP package for you. Okay. Hope that answers your question, Sonia. Editor note. Let me close this. Okay, there. When I save that, I'll get a message saying that this workflow. Okay, it has workflows, that's fine. Now you can see here the template has been saved to site assets library. And if I go to the site assets here, from the site contents, I'll see the WSP package. Okay, you see that? I mean, you can still create the WSP package even for the list workflows. That's the question Mehul has. But the problem with the list workflow is your list GUIDs will be like tightly coupled with those workflows. So when you're deploying in the other environment, you have to make sure that those GUIDs will persist. That's one of the issues that I see with list workflows. But yeah, you could still generate a WSP out of list workflow as well. Okay, so if you guys have questions, yeah, put it in chat window. Okay, so here, going back to the custom task forms, I created a content type, which is for the expenses approval. So you see that I have grouped that as well. And this content type was using parent content type, which is workflow talk SharePoint 2013. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on that and see what are the things that I have. So it has all those columns, which is default coming from the task content type. But there are a couple of columns that I have added in addition. One is comments column. That's one of the most common requirement that you will see when you're working with the approval process, right? Then I have a task outcome. Okay, this is where I think Suresh, you have to do for your particular requirement. I have already created. If you want to make a specific task outcome to be default, then you have to set that value at the first, or set that value as default here. So that will work for you. Okay. So you have a new column type where you could create task outcome, and then that particular task outcome can be used when you are working with task forms. Okay. So the other thing that I have done was customizing the task forms. Okay. So by default, if I use the task list, if I look at the forms, if I just go to the new task here, it has a lot of fields, right? Even the edit form looks like similar, and the display form also looks similar. But as an end user, I don't bother about what is description, what is procedures, or what is priority, right? So as a developer, it's my responsibility or your responsibility to make sure you put a proper form to the end user so that they don't have to confuse with a lot of fields. So what I have done here, you might have already seen I hardly have few fields on the display form as well as couple of fields in the edit form, right? So let me show you the one that was not approved, so that you can see basically what was there in the edit. So let's go here, click on edit form here, this one. So I can see the comments only rather than all those fields. So how I did this, I have used JS link. So if I edit this property, and I can go and see the edit web part, which is a list view web part, and I have a miscellaneous. Let's go there. I have this JS link, and what I did here is I have loaded both the jQuery file as well as the respective JavaScript file, okay, which is task edit form.js. So this one is stored in the site assets. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at how the site assets or this particular file looks like in the site assets. Let's go to site assets here. And let's look at the edit form. So you should know jQuery on how to, if you wanted to implement these things. So what I did, I have used the selectors, and I was trying to get each column which is starts with. That's why when you create site columns, make sure you don't use underscores and all those things, so that this looks pretty when you are trying to do. Okay, so now I can see all those information was available. And also I wanted to show one more thing here by looking at the code. I have written a code here. So what this code basically does is, if I am approving it, I don't have to provide any comments, but if I am rejecting it, I have to provide the comments. So you're making sure you're doing the validation also with the help of this script. Okay, and I did the similar thing for the display form as well. Where what are the fields that I don't need, I just went ahead and hide those fields. Okay, so we have a few more questions. One more question from Sonia. What approach should we use to deploy the list workflows if you have different list GUID? Try this probably, try to remove the association with the list, okay, and make the WSP and try to deploy it. But obviously when you have list workflows, I think you might need to rebuild the particular workflow in the target environment. We have one more question from Rajiv. We have a loop in SP 2013 workflows. Yes, loops were introduced from SP 2013 workflows onwards, because now all these workflows will be run outside of your SharePoint server, which uses basically a workflow manager instead of SharePoint server. So 2010 workflows will be executed from SharePoint server. Okay, this will be run by SP server. But SP 2013 onwards, it will be run by workflow manager. Okay. And Janet has a question. Will that task edit form script will be available to us? Yes, I'm going to send all these workflows that I have done, the WSP package as well as scripts, along with the, I'm also recording this session, and this will be available for you guys after this workshop. Can we send an email to external users from SP 2013 workflows? That's an interesting question. I don't think that option is available as far as I know with the external emails. Yeah, for example, you're talking about sending an email to Gmail or Hotmail or the other users. But there is an option to send those. Yeah, I can check that and get back to you soon once. But by default, it's not available. No, that's what I know. Shekhar has a question. Is there any option to use workflow in apps? Yes, Shekhar. You can still build workflows within the apps, but you can't use workflows using SharePoint Designer. You have to use Visual Studio if you are building apps or add-ins. Okay. So Balaji has a question. I have seen someone doing solution using third-party like Mintext to gen between levels of workflows. Yes, you can do that. Even with SharePoint Designer workflows, you can still do that using stages. Okay. Yeah, and I just had a small announcement, guys. I'm actually starting the SharePoint Online Development Workshop. This is going to start from July 1st onwards. It happens on Saturday and Sunday, IST, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So if you are interested, go ahead and check that out. So I'm going to just paste the link here. Okay. This is basically is for SharePoint online development only, not the SharePoint on premises. But most of the concepts are applicable for both SharePoint on premises as well as SharePoint online. So what I did was I just created a coupon for you guys who joined the webinar, which you would like to get access to. So just go ahead and check. And these are the concepts that I'm going to cover on a weekly basis. So this starts from JavaScript, jQuery, then next week there would be REST, JSON. Then after that you will have SharePoint add-ins, and also we're going to discuss about provider-hosted add-ins. Then I'm going to talk about tools as well as Visual Studio workflows that we're going to develop. And other important thing was SharePoint framework, which was released recently. So I'm going to talk about how to develop web parts, how to customize the modern team sites, because recently they have released SharePoint framework extensions as well. I'm going to talk about in the last week branding, how we are going to do branding. So it goes for almost like 8 weeks, which is 16 hours. You will see similar to what I was trying to do now. So we will have a group calls and we will be using the same kind of tool. So if you're going to join, this is what I'm just planning to provide. I mean, I never did that, to be honest. So if you're interested and if you're going to join by today itself, so you're going to get access to these additional courses that we have. As well as there would be a 25% discount if you could join. Yeah, please go ahead and check out if you're interested. Okay, so that's it. All those details are available in courses at SharePoint Journey School. If you'd like to check those information, so you can go ahead and check that. Yes, you will get access to those, Balaji. And the good thing about these workshops is you will be getting assignments as well at the end of each week. So basically you can go through those assignments, and we will be building a project as well in SharePoint Online. So I'll be taking one real world application, and this is actually the third batch, not the first or second. So which means you will get access to all the resources that were, or the recordings that was done for the previous batches. So in fact, you could go ahead and start with those as well, instead of waiting for next 9 days if you sign up. Yes, Gaurish. I think if you want to send an email to external users, yeah, you have to use the third party. But I can definitely confirm that. So I'll open now for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask. Either you can unmute it or put it in the chat window. I hope you guys found this workshop useful. Yeah, and like I said, this recording will be available later. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Devendra. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, Devendra.
Yeah, tell me, Suresh. Is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I have sent one mail also to you. My question is, I have 5 levels of approvals right now.
Okay.
Okay. Initially, a staff can submit a request. Then, if you approve it, I mean, it will go to next stage, right? Next stage is somewhat like a department head.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he approves it, it will go to next level. And if he rejects, stops, we have to stop the workflow.
Okay.
And one more stage, I am taking a revert. If he selects revert, it has to go back to the creator. Again, it will go to the, I mean, who creates that item.
Okay.
Then he will modify whatever the items, I mean, whatever the changes he want, then he will resubmit again. I have approached some other way, I achieved it. But my question is here, we have a control called, action control called set approval process, right? Yeah, in that, I found that in task edit item, task approval form is there, right? In the task approval form, I have found only approve and reject outcomes only.
Yeah. Are you talking about out of the box or custom workflow?
Out of box only.
Yeah, in out of the box, yeah, you will have only those two. So if you wanted to
Yeah,
provide custom task
yeah,
outcomes, yeah,
yeah.
you would need the custom content type and the task outcomes that will be associated. So that
Okay, okay.
yeah, you can
There also, Devendra, here I have found that one option called we can create some other outcomes also in that set approval process.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
I
but
mean, I have created one more outcome called something like revert back outcome. But while giving, I mean, while I'm comparing if current item status equal to approved, I have to perform these actions. If current item action equal to rejected, it will stop the workflow. Or else I have to perform some other actions.
yeah. So
Yeah,
what you have to do is you have to check the outcome variable and
yeah,
put different conditions in the transitions to
yeah.
stage.
But I am not getting that base. I mean that comparison conditions in that workflow.
Yeah, the problem is you are trying to use the out of the box one. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, and okay, you have to create some custom content type, right, Devendra?
Correct, correct.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I'm aware of those custom content types, these custom approval process and all.
Okay.
If you have any material or videos related regarding that custom content type, will you forward that?
Yeah, you have seen how we do that, right? You basically inherit from the task, workflow task, SharePoint 2013 content type, and you add your columns. That's it.
Okay. Actually, when you started, I have joined, but meanwhile, I
Yeah,
have
this
some.
recording will be available, Suresh. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Devendra. Yeah, welcome.
Srinivas has a question. So, do you have anything else, Suresh?
No, Devendra.
Okay, thanks.
Definitely. If I found any means, is that I mean, can I have your mail ID, please?
Yeah, I think it's there, right? You might have got an email about this workshop, so you can
Yeah,
just
yeah,
reply to that.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Devendra.
No
If
worries.
I found, I mean, if I have any queries, means definitely I'll mail you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. So we have provision to send email to external users in SP 2010. Yes, Srinivas, we have that, but we don't have that in 2013. Yes, I'll be available for another 5 minutes. Yeah, someone is asking any questions.
Will you hear me?
Hello. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Devendra. Yeah,
Yes.
this is Srinivas. Actually, I've done one task on that external user part. So, two times I created a workflow for that in SharePoint Designer. What I done previously, 2010 2013 workflow I created wherever I email part required. Through 2013, I called 2010 workflow for preparing part.
Okay. Okay. That's
Right?
that's a good workaround.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is I done, but finally at last that is not work for the task.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I think. Yeah.
Again, I created the same workflow in Visual Studio.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, finally I achieved what I client expected.
Good. Good. Good.
And one more thing is one requirement is came that the client in that part also external use involvement is there. For that, I created application page for another anonymous user for access the page, that particular web part. In that, user customer raise a request, the internal user will approve that. If the internal user request ask for request clarification, again it will send back to the requester, the external user. Right. So for that, which workflow is preferable? Can you give a suggestion on that? Designer or Visual Studio?
If you are using application pages and trying to get that information, then obviously, so if you want to have custom solutions, so let's go ahead and build the Visual Studio workflow. Yeah, but I'm not sure why you wanted to use application page. So you could have used a list and enable the anonymous access and provide that form. Uh, is there any specific requirement why you want to go with application page instead of just the list form?
The customers are external users. They don't have a account in SharePoint, right? SharePoint site. So they will not access inside SharePoint list
Right,
or
right,
any.
right. So are you talking about on-premises, right?
Yeah, actually the site is form-based authentication site, right?
Okay, okay.
That is.
All right, all right.
So the customer requirement is only the customer raise a request. That's it. If you have any open request, he has to see in that application page only.
Okay. But anyway, you will be storing that information in any one of the list or library, correct?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm storing in one list.
Yeah, so then from there, you can just take it either SharePoint Designer Workflow or Visual Studio. So that still works.
Yeah, okay, fine. Actually, I am in dilemma, which for the previous workflow, actually, I got very struggle in that. Three workflows which I created for external user to send reminders, meanwhile, as well as reminders part and notification part and submission.
Okay.
That is the type. So, which one is preferable? That's what I asked.
Yeah, I mean, always designer workflows will make your life easier and easy to develop and quick to develop.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Devan. That's it.
No problem. Welcome. Shekhar has a question. I want to ask, can we create and deploy application pages in SP Online? Hey, no, you can't deploy application pages because you're not having access to the SharePoint servers. So it's not allowed because application pages will be deployed to your 15 high or the local folder. Okay, guys, thank you so much for attending the session today. So if you have any questions, yeah, just send me an email. I'm happy to help you.